let's get going. So we're here to talk about PMO maturity and specifically how we can apply that in your organization. Let's move forward.
Do you have a clicker? I forgot to ask before we got started. I can be the clicker for you.
That's
How's
awesome.
that? Okay.
Okay, great. So 3 takeaways, and hopefully some of these will align with the reasons you mentioned on why you're here. So the first piece is organizations are becoming more and more projectized. What that means is traditionally how organizations were kind of structured by function, it's more and more becoming structured by projects. Whether, we are here from multiple industries, and hopefully we're going to see how we can help deliver predictable and consistent project delivery through these organizations that are becoming more and more projectized. The next piece that we're going to talk about is there is an approach, a formal methodology to determine where you are in your PMO maturity today. And that's a big part of the discussion that we'll talk about. The next piece is once you know what level of maturity you're in, then a decision has to be made. Are we okay at the level that we're in, or do we want to strive at the higher level? If there is a movement, a desire for movement upwards, there should be a roadmap to getting us there. And we help with several organizations with determining their maturity level, but more importantly, the second part, how do we actually help improve the maturity as you move up the actual continuum? So that's where we want to recognize the value of strong partnerships, of improving your PMO with your organization, with software partners like Sciforma, and perhaps consulting firms like Strategic Front, where that's what Rachel and I are here to talk about. So those are the 3 objectives that we have for the session today. So maybe we can move forward to the next slide. So just wanted to introduce the presenters, and I'll kind of do us the favor of introducing myself as part of that as well. Let's start with Rachel. So Rachel Atkins is actually very much of a specialist in the project management space. She's been at the global Big 4 organizations, at Deloitte, at PwC, and have actually lived, breathed, and practiced PMO maturity through the years of services that Rachel has produced, and is now an independent consultant, and has been a pleasure working with Rachel with Strategic Front. So that's Rachel. With myself, Farzad Khan, I have also sort of grown up in the consulting ranks at both IBM Consulting as well as Deloitte, which is where I met Rachel a while back, and have been in the space of project, process, and change management. And how do we leverage those 3 areas, project, process, and change, to deliver strong value as well as deliver projects to client organizations. So that's really my focus. So that's the introduction there. So maybe we can move forward to the next piece. Okay, wonderful. Now if I may invite Rachel to discuss what a PMO is.
If I hang out here, am I still in the camera just because we'll need to shift the slides? Okay, great. Thank you everyone for introducing yourselves and talking about what you wanted to get out of this session. So the first part might seem kind of simplistic, what is a PMO? But I think just by hearing about the different PMOs that you all work in and the different organizations and the different industries, I think it's really important, because we're going to be using that acronym all throughout this presentation, that we get aligned on what do we mean by project management office and even PMO. I was having a discussion with someone that I met that I don't know very well on the weekend, and I said, I use that acronym in talking about what I do, and they said, oh, that's really cool. You work for the Prime Minister's office. No, it's project management. But the whole idea is that, PMO means so many different things to so many different people, right? And so for all of us here, we're pretty confident that it means project management office. But you could very easily also say SPMO for strategic project management office, or 3PMO for project program portfolio office. There's many different ways that you can, many different acronyms, many different titles, and actually also many different definitions. So of course I went to look to see what is actually the common, easy sort of definition that could be applicable to, regardless of what your industry is and what the department is that you work in. I first went to Wikipedia, and then of course I had to go to PMI, but really all of the Google searches, everything came up. They're great definitions, But if you read through them, they do feel a little bit administrative and a little bit on the controlling side. So in all of the years that I've been working with project management offices, I don't really see them as administrative and controlling. There's an element of that, but it's much more than that. It's really about driving and enabling the business. Yeah. So I came up with my own definition, so allow me to read it to you. A project management office is an essential component that enables the successful delivery of key initiatives for a department, unit, or organization, and hence enables its overall future success. An effective PMO should manage expectations, drive the right behaviors, and ensure the right level of communication and accountability. I like this definition because I think it really elevates the PMO. It's a business enabler. It's not just about, the controlling part is just a small piece of that. Now, I generally add these other 2 points on the bottom here about what a PMO is and what it is not. I'll let you read it, but one of my favorites is that it's not intended to be unnecessary bureaucracy and overhead. And I think that's really, really important, that it's not that. Next slide. Thank you, Herzog. So the next question is really about, is your PMO adding value? And I know you guys talked a lot about sort of thinking, you're all working within PMOs, you might be leading a PMO, but the important thing to really understand here is your PMO providing value? And it's really important for us to answer that question, because as we're thinking about maturing the PMO, and I'm assuming that's why we're all here, right? Because that's the title of the session. But as you're thinking about maturing your PMO, it's really important to understand where you are right now and the value that you're providing, so that you can know what is it that you want to change, how do you want to enrich that value, so that you're thinking about the next level of maturity. Thank you. So I want to introduce to you the PMO maturity continuum. And you can see that on one side it's ad hoc, so that's where you don't really have a lot of structure, but you are certainly more flexible and nimble, and you can quickly respond to the needs of the business. I like that you're laughing. And on the other end of that spectrum is the optimized version. So that's really where your PMO is built on a structure of, rigor and project management best practice. And you might say it could be a little bit rigid even, but I wouldn't necessarily use that word, because if you're optimized, you should also be in a position where you're thinking about how do you continuously improve, and how do you think ahead about offering project management services that are of value in the future. So it's not right or wrong to fall anywhere on this continuum, right? You could be ad hoc, and that might be perfectly okay. So for example, if you're working in an early stage tech startup, it really doesn't make sense that you have this optimized PMO. It's not necessarily what the business needs. They're growing very fast, and they're hopefully growing very big. So you want more so a flexible, nimble project management office. But if perhaps you're working in an engineering firm, like you guys have mentioned over here, then it's probably really important. Maybe you're designing a hospital. You kind of want to be more on the optimized end of that spectrum. So it's not right or wrong to fall anywhere. It depends on what the business need is. And so what I would ask you to do is think to yourself, where do you lie on this continuum right now? And then importantly, where is it that you want to go? And where we want to go should really be driven by what the business need is. So I talked a little bit about value, and I used the word the value of the PMO. So thinking about what value your PMO is bringing to your organization. And I like to refer to these 5 as sort of your levers of value. And I think it's really important that regardless of where that you are in the continuum, you're touching on all of these levers. So the first one, contributing to business growth. So we've all been in situations where we're trying to get people to fill out templates, please, business, please complete this project plan, or please fill out this report. If you are not in some way showing that you're contributing to the business growth, that's going to be a really tough conversation. And I'm sure that many of you have been in that conversation. I've been in it many times myself. And I always start that by talking about how I'm contributing to business growth. This is something that we have to do, but here's the value that that's going to bring. The second part is reducing business risk. So, risk management is a core part of project management. And it's amazing to me how even just being able to share what are the risks, thinking about what they are, that already starts to diminish what the risk is for the business, for the project's work that you're doing. The third point, keeping management informed. So this is the part that I actually get most excited about. This is, related to those 2 or 3 page dashboards that you put together that represents all of the project work that's happening overall. And those are the most powerful communication tools that you can have within your PMO. Because if they are nice, succinct, clear, and they have a very clear message, then the leadership can look at that and they automatically know what is the information that I need to make a particular business decision. So that can be one of the most important tools for your project management office. And then the bread and butter of a PMO, delivering successful projects, that's a no-brainer. The last part, let me use an analogy. So if you have a legal department within your organization, and that might even be just one lawyer or multiple lawyers, anyone in the organization that has to deal with a matter related to legal is going to go to that department to get help. And so this part is about, for your PMO, if anybody in your organization has a matter related to project management, they should be coming to you within your group, right? You should be seen as the experts in project management for your organization. Now that doesn't mean taking on a whole bunch of additional work. I mean, it could, which might give you the rationale to say to your leadership, hey, I need more project managers, I need to be delivering more services. But it could also be something as simple as someone from the marketing department where they have lots of projects is saying, hey, I'm thinking about doing my PMP. Do you mind mentoring me? It could be something really as simple as that, but this is about your reputation. So we've talked about the value, we've talked about what a PMO is. Just to expand that definition of a project management office, I think regardless of how small it might be or how pervasive it might be for the organization, it really should be looked at as a comprehensive system. So you've got the key components like the people and the skills and the competencies that they bring for that project management office. Then you have your services. So what kind of services are you offering to all of your stakeholders? And then your processes, so the practices and the the project management discipline that you're applying, and then supported by the tools, tools like Skyforman's tools and other things that are really helping you deliver your services. So it's thinking about all of those components, then also thinking about the operating environment. So what's the environment? And that could be, as big as what's your industry, what kind of business do you deliver, and then down to even the culture within the department that you serve. So it can be all those different things, and of course, then your leadership style will really dictate, how it is that you're working, the services that you're delivering. So all of these things play into your project management office. So again, I would encourage you to think of that project management office as a holistic, comprehensive system. And then you have the value levers that you pull along the way, and then you may have more emphasis on one or the other. So I think at this point I've done a good job of making it sound really complicated, hopefully. So now for the real meaty, interesting part, I'm going to hand it back to Farzad. So this is where he's going to help you come up with a way to think about, in consideration of all of these factors, how do you now go forward and think, well, I'm at this particular place on the continuum, and I really want to move along to this particular point. This has most meaning in my organization, and if I can fill a business need and I can be clear about what that business need is, I'm most likely to get the buy-in and then the investment that I need to move along as well. So with that, I'll hand it over to Farzad.
Thank you, Rachel.
Would you like me to be the clicker? Okay.
Any questions on what Rachel mentioned? Because she actually touched on some very important topics on what is a PMO, what are the different components that make up a PMO, and what value the PMO provides. Any questions?
One quick one is a concept that I've seen that doesn't seem to quite line up with this is the City of Toronto actually has what they call a virtual PMO. Half their staff don't know it exists, but they have where if you go to the diagram you had, it only covers kind of the bottom half. It only covers the process, the tools and the processes. There's really kind of no people involved in it other than the setup. So how does that kind of structure fit into what we're talking about? Or does it simply
So
not?
what do you mean by they have no people?
Exactly, they must have people, right?
Well, let's say in terms of the day-to-day operating of it, basically they have people who did the initial setup of it.
Right.
It's there, it's a library, it's accessible with all the tools and processes documented.
Okay, so it's kind of like a self-serve PMO.
Effectively,
sort of.
that's
Right,
what I mean.
okay.
So instead of having a group that manages it day to day,
Mhm.
there may be hidden someplace in City of Toronto's organization, I don't know who they are. They may have somebody who is minding it, but you don't go to them to get your
Right.
information, you don't want to.
So I would think that that's a very, it's almost more like that's a project controlling self-serve situation, right? Because to me, if you're looking for project management, if you're looking for a project manager to come in and help and organize, there is some PMI stat that says that 97% of the work that you do is really about being there, communicating, guiding things through people through different parts of the project journey. So to me, that sounds like they're giving you access to tools, on a self-serve basis. But I would be really hesitant to call that a PMO.
Right.
Kiosks and
Yes.
Exactly.
Yeah. Yeah.
It's a PMO knowledge repository or support structure.
Right.
that they're
Exactly.
providing.
Exactly.
So would it be safe to say that, you have a, functioning and operating PMO, you need all these four pieces?
I think so.
Effectively to manage a
Yes.
PMO without,
Absolutely.
yeah, okay.
For sure. Yep.
Okay, that's great.
Does that answer your question?
Yes, sir.
Okay.
My question is, for PMO, how do you make it consistent in some process, but not to be too complex? Because again,
Yes.
some complaint people may have is for a large project, important project, they realize that PMO needs to be there. They have audit guidance and things
Yes.
like that. But that's a small project. They say I spend more time on the admin side, filling the forms and paper and things like
Correct.
that, than doing my project. What's the value?
Yes.
So
That's a good point, and that is something we will touch on scalability of maturity. It doesn't have to be overly onerous to be at a high maturity in an organization. You can have a scalable way of doing that. We're going to talk about
Yeah, I know that's in your part. I just very quickly to respond to that though. I've implemented PMOs where I've said you have thresholds. So if the project that you're looking to do is of this size and complexity, here's the amount of rigor that you need. And then you need more rigor as you move along. There's a greater cost, it's more complex, it's more pervasive in the organization. Then you increase the rigor as you move along.
Right, absolutely. Let's get going into the next part of the discussion then. Does that answer the question? Or we're going to cover a little bit more of what you asked as part of this as well. So charting your path to maturity. Let's just understand what this whole maturity level is from a content perspective. First, if we see on the left side, there's an arrow going up that says maturity level, going from level 1, the most basic, which we call as ad hoc. And then as you mature up to the next level, which is structured, that's a level 2. And level 3 is around managed. We're going to define in a moment what each of those mean. But before we get into the center, on the right side, you see the investment going up as well. As an organization matures their PMO, there is a level of understanding that investments from people perspective, as well as technology, as well as processes, the services, all of that actually goes up from an investment perspective as well. But the bigger point here is, just like any other investment, an organization has to ensure that are they getting the right return on their investments. In other words, just because you're in level 1, you don't have to strive for level 3 if the investment doesn't guarantee an appropriate return, right? For example, in new startups, as Rachel had mentioned, if it does not make sense to go up to a level 3 and invest all of that highly sought or needed dollars instead of spending it on services or products, if it does not make sense to actually move those dollars to improving PMO maturity, then don't do it. So that's a decision that an organization needs to make in terms of where they are in the maturity level today. That's number 1. Number 2, what's the desired level of their maturity? And does the desired level, it definitely comes with an investment, and is that investment actually worth it? So that concept is clear then? So the differences with the maturity level and investment. Now let's talk about the 3 levels. First, the level 1. So ad hoc. What an ad hoc organization is, at the very least, it recognizes projects. In other words, whether it's the firm's management or board of director or whoever, it recognizes a project and it can tell the difference between a project versus an operations activity, like accounts payable, accounts receivable, standard operations activities, versus a project where we're implementing SAP to improve financial management so our accounts receivable and payables are managed better. So recognizing the difference between a project and the regular operations of an organization, that is the very least the startup of the maturity level. So level 1, ad hoc. The next piece about the level 1 that we need to recognize when we do assessments is now that the organization has recognized what the different projects are, one of the key findings that we come across when we do assessment for level 1 is each project is actually run very differently from one another. That means if you give a project to Joe, they'll be running it very differently from a project that Cindy will be managing, right? And or if you give it to finance, they'll be running it in a very different way than marketing. So the way the organization runs one project versus another is very different in terms of the deliverables it produces, the way it does the planning, the way it does the execution of project, the closing and all of that. It's done very differently. So that's the piece there. Level 1, it recognizes a project. Level 2, one project runs very differently from the other. It might, by chance, kind of run 2 or 3 projects similarly, but that really is by chance. It's not a management decision that they make. So that's level 1. Level 2 is it's really a step up. What level 2 does is it provides standardization really. So it really defines that, okay, based on let's say, the point on if the organization runs small projects versus large projects, how do you manage projects under 500K? So in other words, what is the process? How do you qualify a project? How do you initiate the project? How do you plan it? By planning it includes financial planning as well, but certainly the actual project activity planning. How do you execute it? How do you report on it? And how do you close it? Each of these are actually defined for different tiers of project, if I may call it that. I'm defining tiers by financial numbers, say under 500K, or the next tier could be 500 to 5 million, or over 5 million, or what have you. You can also define tiers by risk. So, maybe you have market or client exposure, and depending on how you fit in based on the risk, you can actually classify your tiers based on that as well. So what level 2 does again, it really formalizes the definition and the standardization on how projects should be run. And now what we've done is for a step up from level 1 to level 2. Now that you look at the same organization after say 6 months of improving the maturity from 1 and 2, what happens is instead of having all these 10, 20, 30 projects running differently from one another, what you've achieved from level 1 to level 2 is all 10 or 20 run in a very standardized way, which is a really great thing because it actually sets you up very well for the level 3 that I'm going to talk about in a moment. So we're okay with level 2? Standardization is the key word. Now let's take a step back. Okay, we recognize our projects. We have standard ways of delivering different tiers project. When someone says tier 2, we know exactly what it means, whether you define it from a financial perspective or risk perspective or any other perspective. And we know how to deliver projects given level tier 2. The PMO head will know exactly how tier 2 projects are delivered and what deliverables are expected, what kind of management reports are expected, and all of that. More guided standardization. The third part, it actually gets into data. So this is managed. As someone mentioned, you cannot manage something if you don't measure it, right? So manage is really about data. That is, you look at, let's say, number of use cases in a project. Based on the number of use cases and complexity, it drives estimation. You're using data like that. Use case complexity drives estimation. So if someone comes in with a new project, you would know exactly that, okay, over the last 1 year or 2 years, we've had similar projects with 10 use cases with 6 high and 4 medium complexity, it kind of costs us 500K. So likely we can estimate faster based on that data. So you're able to manage projects based on decisions on data. The other piece about management is ensuring that in terms of people and skills capabilities, so ensuring that you actually deliver the right people or assign the right people to the right project. So that again comes with how you actually manage it. So instead of just picking the person who's the most available at that point in time, you actually think about it more strategically that, okay, we have a project coming in that's going to require so-and-so skill set, and then you look at your kind of resource management charts, and you assign the right people with the right skill set, and you kind of get to that level at the managed level. So the important thing here is you need to be a level 1 to get to level 2. You actually need to be a level 2 to get to a level 3. You cannot go from 1 to 3, right? But that decision still has to be made. Does it make sense for my organization to go to level 3? Because that is actually, there's a huge kind of curve up from an investment perspective to go from standard structure to managed. Any questions?
That's very scalable too, though.
Absolutely.
Because you could have a managed organization in a small company that would be considered ad hoc as soon as you grow into a larger organization.
Sure, yes. So there's no absolute answer to this. It also depends on your organizational size and complexity as well. What is managed in a 100 people organization could actually be structured or even ad hoc to a 100,000 people organization. Absolutely. Okay. Yes.
Do you measure also the success of the projects in level 3, things like on time, on budget, on delivery, and all those things in level 3 or not?
Absolutely. I mean, things like on time, on delivery and budget and all of that, you're doing it even at the ad hoc, but what's happening is ad hoc, you're measuring it just for that one project, right? Is it consistent for that one project versus another? There's no data to show that. You're still doing that. You're not waiting until level 3 to do that. You're also doing it at level 2 because now you have a structure, which is great, but you're also measuring on time, on budget, the 3 triple constraints. But in the managed, you're actually continuing to measure and use that data for future performance, current performance, and actually using it to better manage your overall project management portfolio. Make sense? Yes?
So, since we are doing that in level 3, you mentioned that it's not necessary for every organization to be at level 2.
Yes.
Why is that?
Yeah, so level 3, again, is the more rigorous form of being at a mature level. But the point is, you can measure on time, on budget, on delivery, on scope, even at the ad hoc level, right? But that is, again, at a very kind of project-based measurement. What managed does is looks at your entire portfolio, and it says, not only do we have a picture of individual projects, but also for the full portfolio. So that you don't have to invest to get to level 3. You can still do that at a project level at ad hoc. Yes.
Can I just comment to that? So when you're talking about the PMO, just to your point about business structures. So within your PMO, to the diagram that you have of people, processes, and services and tools, if you break the PMO down into those components, you can also measure those components based on this model here, that your people could be very mature from a managed level in terms of skill sets, abilities. Your services might be a bit more structured, but your tools could be ad hoc because you're always starting at the point of looking at what tools you need to help drive the delivery. So I wouldn't want to look at the PMO maturity model from this focus as the entire PMO has to be at this level. But the components within can be at different levels, and as you grow and your people and your tools and your processes, that changes that structure there.
Right. What a great segue, actually, if I may, to the next slide.
I'm sorry, I still have I apologize.
Okay. Now, if I tell you that you're at a level 2, does it really mean anything to you?
No.
Think about it. Rachel walks into your organization, she does your assessment, and she tells you, you're at a level 2, and you're the head of PMO over there, or even a PM. Why does that even matter? It really doesn't actually. So, what's happening is here, the way to read this slide is actually bottom up. You have an overall maturity level, level 1, 2, or 3, in its most basic form. Now again, to me at least, that doesn't mean anything. It's just like saying, the average height of the country is whatever. you know? So, okay, so what, right? If I'm a clothing manufacturer, what size do I make? Doesn't really matter. So now, you actually have to break it down into individual levels, so it's actually more meaningful to you, to the point that Amy has made. Now, we've actually broken down on what is meaningful in few components here. Let's talk about those now. So when we go in, do the assessment, so again, we're not going to do it just at the PMO level. We're going to roll up the data, average it out, but then we're actually be looking at the first thing is your organizational governance. What kind of governance do you have? In other words, the project that you're managing, is it reporting up to a PMO? Is it reporting up to a functional discipline? How do all of these different functional discipline projects roll up at an organizational level? Who governs the actual assignment in terms of finance of a project? How do we keep track of project progress, both at an individual project perspective, but also at an organizational perspective? What's the overall governance? That's what we want to know. And then based on the findings that we have and the questions that we have, you will come up as a 1, 2, or a 3 at a governance level. So you actually have a very detailed idea of where your governance sit from a maturity, regardless of any other components. Then we look at the next practice, which is around management control. Just because you have good governance, that is, you have a good organizational hierarchy, does not mean you have good control, right? A good example of that, a few years back in Saskatchewan, a train hit a car, right? And then, a few days later, the Minister of Transportation in Ottawa got fired. Okay, now, do you see the relationship of controls? Was that Minister of Finance in that train at that time? Was he or she driving the train? No. Were they on the rail track fixing it? No. They were removed. They were not even anywhere in Saskatchewan. They could have been in Ottawa, having whatever, an important kind of strategy meeting over there. But that person got fired. And the reason for that is controls. So again, projects are running. If you're leading a PMO, you may not be running the individual project, but we need to have strong controls that actually gives us right data and information based on the top 10% high-risk projects that we have. Do we know at any given point in time how well they're progressing, either on the basis of the triple constraints, the time, cost, as well as scope, but also in terms of delivery of services to the end clients, which could be internal or external, stakeholders. So that's controls. So that train, if it gets hit in Saskatchewan, the person in Ottawa doesn't get fired, right? They should have, strong control, right from the ground level up to the strategic office or the PMO or any of those, those levels. So that's what a control is. Okay, and then you get measured on that. The next is benefits management. Often talked about, but not done at the end of the project. At the beginning of a project, almost always everyone needs to make a case because you only have so many dollars in an organization. So now what happens is that case is lost at the end of the project. All these things like, oh, it's going to reduce our headcount, or it's going to increase our efficiency, or what have you. It's going to increase our our sales, our marketing, and all of that. Once the project is delivered or close to delivery, no one is tracking that anymore. So we want to ensure that benefit management is appropriately tracked for individual projects, but also at a portfolio level. And that's what that is. Next, an all-important topic, and actually Rachel is very familiar with that. She used to be one of the leaders in project risk services at Deloitte. So risk management, again, do we know early on what our risks are? Known and unknown risks, number one. Do we know the risks? Next, do we know how to mitigate it? What I just told you is at a project level, but also at a portfolio level, do we know the overall risk exposure of a given portfolio? And that's an important piece. And the answer may be different from one or the other. You could know risks about your project, an individual or a couple projects, but your overall portfolio may be at risk. For example, risk of overall people shortage, right? You might have very well-resourced project in one of the projects, but overall, based on the top pipeline of projects coming in, that may be an exposure that you have that's going to probably result in failure at the end of the fiscal year. You know that through risk management assessment of your PMO maturity assessment through this. So risk management, again, at a project level, also at a portfolio level.
How do you reconcile risk management for a PMO when you've actually got structures for risk management for the organization?
Yeah, absolutely. Especially with larger organizations, they actually have a risk function. And even within the risk function, they have line of business risk. They even have technology risk and, really overall risk from a governance risk all the way up to the CRO, right? So again, that's where the peeling of the onion will need to come in. So for example, with projects, they usually fall under operations risk, let's say. Within operations risk, if there's a component around project risks or project risk, that actually measures up at the governance of the overall risk in the organization. Anything else on risk?
Well, I think if the organization has a risk department, then they're not necessarily going to be looking at risks for the projects. So really, you should be connected, but I don't think that you're going to be duplicating each other's work, because they're looking at ongoing day-to-day risk for the organization, and potentially even what are the risks of this strategy that we want to execute on, but they're not going to be looking project by project at those very specific risks.
Absolutely. I'm just taking a look. If you're looking at the portfolio, you've got emerging threat. Usually that's the CRO who's identifying the emerging threat.
Right.
Communication back to a PMO is that a move forward or kill decision then on a project because you're going to just need those.
Yeah, absolutely. So they definitely have to work together.
Exactly.
One of the things I've experienced in many organizations, like, in a project, resources that you mentioned, for example, resources are challenge, right? Because one resource could be in a multiple projects. So the recommendation is that, the organization should mitigate all the risks before they jump into a project, or knowing the risks that there are resource shortages, should they still continue with the projects that are ongoing in the organization? What's the...
Well, that's a good question, because I don't think you can actually mitigate all the risks,
Mm.
right? And that could take a huge investment.
Right.
So I think it's like most things that we do in life, right? We have to sort of be aware of what those risks are, accept some of them, and jump in anyway.
Okay, yeah.
So,
Absolutely.
Okay.
Absolutely.
Thank you.
Great.
I have a question. So we talked about risk at the portfolio level, both known and unknown, but isn't the very definition of unknown risk is that you don't know what that risk is? So how do you assess and factor that in when you don't know what you don't know?
Right. Good old question, right? How do you know? How do you even document unknown risks, right? What the PMI says from a perspective of unknown risk is risk that you know of that may have happened based on past projects or in the industry that you don't know whether or not that risk will actually happen in your project, but you've documented it. For example, in the construction industry, there is the risk of potential snowstorm, right? If you're doing construction in January. Is that snowstorm going to happen? We don't know, right? So therefore, it is an unknown risk that we have to factor in.
So we're defining unknown risk, that's risk that may or may not happen in
That's right.
conditions versus what you don't know.
Right.
Okay.
Versus, say, something like the supplier will be delayed in delivering products 10% of the time. That's a known risk. You know it's going to happen 10% of the time, but are you going to move forward with the project or not? If you have the right mitigation, then go for it. Okay? So that's risk. Next is stakeholders. Important. This is about people. This is about people who care. Now, we often think of stakeholders as direct stakeholders within the organization, who are owners or users of the product or services we're delivering as part of the project. So let's say the business side or the client side of our project. But there could be non-direct stakeholders as well, which could be outside of your organization or even outside of your client organization. But stakeholder management is about being mindful of what are the different stakeholder relationships that you have, and then how are you addressing each of those relationships proactively. So, and knowing where you are in your stakeholder management is what this particular assessment is about. I'm going to jump finance in a second. Now you may be wondering, what's the difference between stakeholder management and resource management? The real difference is, resource management are direct resources within your project. So, you have a project, you need 10 people to deliver on the project, or 15, or, any number of people. Those are direct resource management that has a direct implications on day-to-day activity, the cost, the budget, and all of that. So that's resource management versus stakeholder is significantly broader than the actual project resources. So again, our resource management piece is around how we manage project resources on a day-to-day and overall at a portfolio level as well.
A good summary would be internal versus external.
Yeah, internal and external stakeholders would be at the stakeholder level,
Yeah.
but resource management are people who are directly in your project. Some of those could also be vendors, right? You could have a project manager who's actually from a vendor organization delivering within the client, and then we'd be a part of that resource pool, as opposed to stakeholders, which could be a lot broader.
So you can look at your stakeholder definition as people, a department, a function, or a group that has an investment or vested interest in the outcome of the project or program.
Yeah, and I would actually extend that more than just investment outcome, has an interest in the actual output of the project, right? So yesterday, everyone knows about the 1,500-page report about sidewalks. Anyone who kind of breathes Toronto air is a stakeholder to that, right? So that's the level of that kind of project. Okay, the last one, finance management. So it's really about budget. How closely are you managing profitability at a project level? And how closely are you managing profitability as well as budget at a portfolio level? And are you aligning the right project to the organization that it actually has a direct alignment to the overall organizational goals in terms of return on investment? That's really finance. Yes?
So not mentioned in there, communications manager, do you see that as being folded throughout that, or is that a separate one?
Absolutely. So communication is one of those. That's a good point. It's quite built in to governance, control, benefits, risk, stakeholders specifically as well, and finance and resource management. It actually goes right across. Yes.
I was going to extend that question to, I don't see change management on as part of your assessment.
Yeah.
Right? And a lot of the initiatives that we drive, I would say, I know that the terminology has changed from change management to transformational initiatives.
Yeah.
So if your PMO is driving those transformational changes or those transformational projects or initiatives, where and how are we looking at that function or the PMO that function to provide that change management component?
Yeah, change is very dear to kind of what we do from a project process and change perspective. And change management really kind of gets into, at the end of the day, with stakeholder and resource management. Once you've actually developed the product, that relationship you have with the stakeholders, how does that product get adopted, used by the different stakeholders, again, the direct users or the indirect users?
Sorry, but I believe, if I may, the comment, which is a very valid comment, that has to do with a set of methodologies and processes that are specifically have to do with how to deal with requirements, changes, and how do you handle that as part of the scope while you're maintaining the basic project scope and budget. So change management has to be something that has to be communicated and agreed with stakeholders at the beginning of the project. Process has to be in place. You have to have a change management review board. We'll look at change, requests that are coming in, and then be able to take a disciplined approach to making an assessment with the client saying, yes, this is an approved change management, or no, this is part of the original scope. I think
because I start with both service management, which I think is feeding what you're talking about in terms of release management, versus change management, organizational and people change.
That's
So
right.
I'm now deploying a product. How do I get you, stakeholder, invested in this product to want to use it? Not so much I want to deploy.
Exactly.
What's the process to deploy?
Exactly.
Okay.
Yeah. So
That's the adoption you're talking about.
it's the adoption of the product. Yes, absolutely. And yeah, so service management change, which John is also quite aware of, and you're talking about the people change management, user adoption. So the first one, people change, user adoption built into the stakeholder, and that's a kind of a discipline in and of itself, but it actually has to be integrated as part of your project delivery. And then the service of actually implementing the change, that will have to be built in as part of the overall delivery of a project. Okay? So now the key point is we talked about the different practices that make up the overall maturity level. You're measured against each of the practices, and then you're given this number of overall maturity, right? So although you get the number at the end over there, but you don't start at the bottom, you actually start at the individual components. Any questions?
So I might be jumping the gun here. Then, in order for you to say the overall one, is it an average or?
Yes, yes.
Okay.
So it is literally, it will be like a 2.2, 3.4. But again, that's the overall maturity level. Again, it will not mean much to you. The next level is, where are we in each of these? That's where the real conversation happens, right? To get you from a level 2 to a level 3. You're actually really good with risk management, but you need to take care of, let's say, stakeholder and resource management. If we improve those, the overall average will actually come up.
And is it okay if, for example, you go into a firm and you do this assessment, is it okay if the firm just says, we only want to stay at level 1 for X, Y, Z, components, but we want to go to another level for the other ones?
Absolutely. Not only is it okay, it is often the case actually,
Okay.
that that they want to focus on some priority items this year, let's say. And this year we're going to focus on financial management. The reason is we're implementing this new Oracle or SAP system, and based on that we need all of our project management finances to be aligned appropriately. So just focus on that, get us from a 1 to even a 3. And that is quite okay and often asked for. Or benefits or what have you. Yes. Yes.
Question. I don't want to derail the conversation too much, but when you're introducing project management office and to an organization that has product management discipline already set in place, do the two cross each other? Do they correlate? Can they support each other? How do you assess it in that way when you're there is a structure, there is governance in a product understanding, but I fail to comprehend how the two can enforce each other for in discipline and strategic delivery of projects, because they're essentially also projects, but from a product perspective.
Yes, yes. So that's a great point. So at the end of the day, what does a project do? It results in an outcome to deliver a product or a new service, new or updated service or new or updated product. So project is a means, it's not the end, right? All of the disciplines here are means. The assumption is if you do all of this right, then you're going to get a great product or a new great service at the end of the day. So I think from a product management perspective, there's an alignment kind of question. If you do the project management right, then you're going to get a product that's going to have the right scope, the right delivered at the right time, and with the right budget. So that's where we would extend it to the product perspective.
Can I just add something to that? Because
Yes.
a client that I had recently had a similar situation to that. So they had a product group that was managing what they were delivering to their end client, and then I was implementing an Office of Strategy Management for them. And actually what they wanted me to do, they were getting a lot of client feedback about, well, the product is not being delivered on time and it's not exactly what we expected. So what we did is we actually took some of the best practices from the Office of Strategy Management that we were creating, and I went to them and I sort of did a little bit of work like, how are things going? How are you actually managing your time? So that was a situation where it didn't make sense to combine the two together because the outcome's very different. They really need to focus more on their client management skills. But they also needed a bit more project management best practice discipline. So, I think what's healthy in an organization is that you're going to have lots of different groups that have a PMO or an OSM or whatever they want to call it, right? Because your marketing department's also going to have some project management that they're doing in their group. And you don't need to have this overall command and control structure. That's not necessarily flexible and nimble enough to meet the needs of the stakeholders for those different groups. So I think, you just want to be in a situation, if you're within a PMO in an organization, that you are spreading the good project management discipline, and you might have to help out some other groups here and there. And that's kind of how I see the two of those playing together.
Okay, great. Thank you. Let's go to the next slide. Now that we know what the different components are, here's how you can actually help with a more structured approach again on determining the maturity level and, more importantly, making improvements at the right practices. That's important to your organization. The first one is know the PMO function or the department. This goes back to Rachel's presentation. In other words, know what is PMO for you, right? What defines PMO in your organization? It could be, you could have multiple PMOs as well. In that case, determine Are we measuring the maturity for the one PMO or all of the PMOs, or what the real scope is from a PMO perspective? So know your PMO function or department that is being assessed and plan the assessment project. So this is a project by itself and needs to be planned just like any other project. Once you've done that, get your people aligned. So you're not doing it in a vacuum. You're ensuring that the people are aware that there's an assessment project coming in. That we need their input in terms of contribution of data, because it is really a collaborative effort. So getting the people aligned, conducting a kickoff would be a great way to actually get the people aligned so that they know what's happening, they know their role, and they know what the expected outcomes are going to be. The third step is to actually conduct the assessment. So there's a formal way of conducting the assessment across all of the different practices that we just looked at, and then rolling up the data at a overall organizational PMO level. So that's conducting the PMO level assessment. That gives you information on where you are today, which is amazing because it tells you where you are on the map. Now you have to figure out where you're going. The fourth step is to determine the desired level. That's where you have to make that decision on, do we want to, which of those practices that we want to improve and to what level, and does the investment in getting from that level today to level tomorrow, is it warranted? And that's a decision you make on the fourth box. Once you've made the decision that I want to make improvements in benefits, in stakeholder, in resources, from level 1 to level 3, level 1 to level 2, what have you, right? Then you create a roadmap of specifically what is it that we're going to be doing? How are we going to be improving people, process, tools, and services to getting us from where we are today to that level? Once you have the roadmap, it's a matter of the journey. You start actioning on the roadmap just like you're executing your other projects. So that's really the roadmap approach that we recommend. Any questions there? If not, yeah.
Are you delving into the fourth point any more than what you just mentioned?
Not today, but we would actually, that's a very detailed conversation that needs to be have had with the organization undertaking the maturity journey on what makes sense to go from level X to a level Y.
So on the left side, you mentioned planning and execution. On the right side, sort of the planning. Where is the execution piece of this? Because it's a very important, the back end is equally important. It includes feedback loop, active involvement, and so on and so on, right? Because a lot of these projects, a lot of our transformation projects fail in general because the executive involvement sort of peters off, drops off, and then the company loses the focus, just looking at the next shiny object, and then we get left behind.
Absolutely. Good point. So the scope of the planning and execution here is around planning and executing the maturity assessment.
Right.
Right? So which is, the execution part is the actual conducting the assessment,
Oh, okay.
determining where you are heading, and coming up with a roadmap. Once you have the roadmap, the real execution really starts at that level on. And that's where all of the change management, the executive buy-in and all of that, well, all of that needs to happen really early on in this cycle as well, but it gets even more rubber hits the road at that time.
If you don't mind me just to pull up, so this is part of an advisory service, right? You set up
Correct.
the stage, but in my experience, a consultant that comes with a solution,
Yes.
if you don't have some kind of oversight or some kind of connection with the execution piece, the execution fails, and then we get blamed for it because somehow
Yeah.
the plan was wrong. So
Absolutely. So which is why the last step, the roadmap, is an important piece. And it's really the start of the execution. Roadmap is where you know where it is that you're heading in terms of going tomorrow. And then how long is the roadmap, the journey going to take? And what are the different pieces of the roadmap? Are we committed to it and actually executing against it? So yeah, that's a good point. Let's go to the next slide. Thank you. Now, partnership. This is important because I kind of, you cannot do everything, alone. So first is your organization, and that's the most important piece here. It is your organization who wants to know what your maturity level is today and how you're going to improve. from a software perspective, I'm a strong believer that strong people with strong technology results in great things. So each of those, the planning, the execution of projects and portfolio management and all of that, if it's backed by a strong software, it's going to help speed up the journey a lot more. Just like if I give you a bicycle, you'll be able to go from here to somewhere else a lot faster than just walking. Right? If I give you a car, you'll be able to go even faster. So that's what software really does, gets you there faster. But also there's the consulting component that talks about things like, knowing the maturity, creating the roadmap, helping deliver the roadmap on an ongoing basis, from a change perspective, from stakeholder management, from executive buy-in and all of that. That's where the consulting team can come in as well. So I see this strong partnership here to be a major factor or a success factor in this overall journey, and it really is a journey. Okay, so that is, and I know Elisa and Maud will touch on the Cypharma pieces quite a bit, but this is just a quick mapping that we have done on all those different practices that we talked about, that there are components in the actual tool that aligns with many of the actual the practices around resource, planning, financial, management controls, and risk. So that's the tool component, but then you need to add onto it the people, the process, the services component to it as well. Rachel?
Okay. Thank you. So I'm going to take the last couple of minutes before we dive into the Skyforma demo. And I wanted to share my top 3 tips for maturing your PMO. And I have a bonus at the end. I just hit the button because it's easier. Oh, okay, sure, you can do that. Okay, so the first one is what I'm really passionate about, that project management is a discipline in its own right. And I'm really excited because I'm starting to hear that come out a lot more. A few years ago, I heard a gentleman speak who wrote a book called The Death of the Lawyer. And really what he was talking about is if a traditional law firm does not change the people that they hire and hire more technology folks and more project managers, then they are not going to be relevant in the next few years. And that was his point. But he also really made a strong point for, don't just hire someone that took a couple of day course to be your project manager. Project management is a discipline. If you are running really important projects in your organization, then you need to be hiring people that have actually trained in this. They've done work. Maybe they have even, their PMP, but it's much more than that, right? It's also about the experience. So you need to have the experience and the background and the know-how to be a good project manager. So this is really important. So get certified yourself. Make sure that your teams have their PMP, go to continuous education, go to seminars, and just make sure that you treat it as a discipline, because it is that. So the second one is around anticipating stakeholder needs. I know that Farzad, you talked about this part quite a bit. This is about knowing your environment, know who your stakeholders are, and then be able to anticipate their future needs. You should be coming up with more proactive project management solutions that you can put in front of them. That is going to increase your value tremendously. The third one is about running your PMO like a business, not a cost center. So it is a business, right? And we talked about it even if we go back to the definition that I shared earlier. It's enabling the business. So you can start to think about the things that you're measuring, the metrics and things like that. Get that all into that 2 or 3 page executive dashboard that I talked about. You are a business function, right? It's not a cost center. And my bonus tip is about elevating your value with executives. So this gentleman in the back already stole my thunder. Thank you. So executive buy-in, right? The number one reason cited in any study for why does a PMO fail? Lack of executive buy-in. Take that amazing dashboard that you created, go to marketing and get them to help you put it together so that it looks really visually pleasing if you have to, right? That executive dashboard is going to allow you to take the opportunity, get in front of those executives, and show the value that your PMO has. So that's it.
Thank you. We're 8 minutes over time, so thank you.
Sorry.
Hi everyone.
Help you increase your success rate from industry by 50% to you will be the ones that will, succeed 90%. One of the big points you just made, executive buy-in, I would add to that active involvement of the senior executive throughout the life of the project. If they drop off halfway, because they're now looking at the next thing that, touches their fancy, we're done. So there's little things that you don't get in a PMP certification course, you get for experience. And I
Yes,
expect
sorry, that's
this-
why I said very clearly, because
Yeah.
I've hired lots of people in a project management office that do not have their PMP. So I am definitely on the same page there. That's a certification, right? That's just going to help you say that you have credibility in this space.
Right.
I think that 75 or more % of it is really your experience.
So my question to you is, so what makes you special? Or how are you different than everybody else?
Well, I don't know about the answer to that question, but can I touch on what you said earlier? Because I think that I'm actually really excited that we're now living in a culture where it's cool to fail, right? Like, is that not the big thing that's coming out now? It's like you fail and you learn from failure. I know where you're going.
Fail fast, it's not fail fast. Right?
And you can fail fast on your project. So when you're thinking about, well, how do I increase my success rate? I think that we have to start to think about, what does success mean? Success doesn't mean that you go back to the charter that you created, 2 or 3 years ago and say, oh, did I deliver that? Maybe you didn't deliver that, and maybe it's perfectly reasonable that you did not. Something massive might have changed in your environment. So I think that we have to get a lot better about defining what success looks like for our project, even if we get to the point where we have to say, we've put this money in, but now we need to make a decision to say we're gonna stop doing this project. And that's perfectly okay as well. So I think that as someone that's running a PMO or running a project, you need to always make sure that you're very clear with your stakeholders. Okay, today, this is what we're delivering. Are we aligned on that?
In my simple mind, there's a very
Okay.
simple answer to your question.
Tell me then.
Delighting the customer every day. As
Yes,
long as the
I love
customer
it.
is
That's great.
absolutely delighted,
Yes.
we'll succeed.
Perfect.
Absolutely.
Great answer. Yeah.
One last comment I want to make. I think, to your point, I think today's organizations, I think they're trying to bite more than they can chew. There's so many projects coming through, and it's really hard to sort of align your PMO with the project's output that they're trying to deliver. And that's one of the experiences that I had in my last project, was that they had a great PMO. They had all the processes going on, but they want to, deliver so many projects that whether you deliver the projects or you want to, make sure your templates are on track, right? Gets a little bit muddy there, right? So I think that's one of the biggest challenges. Organizations are trying to output so much, but their resource level cannot handle that. And that really is the challenge a lot of times, I find.
It sounds like it's a strategy problem, right? Because I do a lot of work in strategy. Strategy is about making decisions.
Correct.
What can you actually do? Choose very small amount that you can do
Right.
and do it really well.
Right.
Don't
Because-
try to do
because
everything
their
because you will fail.
Yeah, because their IT roadmap has so many projects going on, it's just like, how do you deliver that?
Yeah.
But anyway, that's just,
Yeah.
But so, directly to your point,
yeah,
I'm a consultant,
yeah,
but one of my biggest pet peeves, I go to a potential client, we sit together, they love my pitch, and then they go, well, we've got project managers already. We'll just, just give us sort of the information, we'll do it ourselves.
Ourselves, yeah.
So they miss the point, because the reason they're in the mess that they are is because they're doing it with their project managers.
Yeah.
They're not reaching out, and they do not, it's like engineering, I'm engineering by trade, right? We are sort of we're not getting we don't know how to market ourselves as project managers, right? We are a critical element of a success of a transformation project. You cannot do it yourself. Yes, you have people that says PM on their role. Good luck with that. How is that working for you? So that's how do we convince the clients to say, exactly your point, we need that serious, experienced PM resource that has got the scars on his back. Look at them. They've been there. They know how you're going to fail. They're going to keep you out of trouble. How do we get to that?
You can answer that, I'd like to.
Well, that goes to Bob's advocate, right? I mean, if you're pitching to the client, you have to sell them on the value that you provide. That you have this skill, this expertise. Yes, you have experienced PMs, but have they led these kind of large, transformational changes, and what the impact? With the PM discipline, it's all about the outcome that you're looking to achieve and the impact of that if you do this or you don't do this.
Correct.
Right, so that onus is really on you to sell that to the customer. Because I've been on both sides, consulting and on the operations, which is where I'm sitting right now.
Yeah.
And to the comment about strategy. So I have a very small team, but I service facilities, data center operations, infrastructure, and security. And facilities, when we do our budget for the year, facilities has their portfolio, it's approved. That's great, but facilities, we have to do the IT component of the cabling, the routing, the wiring. Did your facilities come talk to IT about all these projects you just got approved to see if we can support that? No, we didn't. So that's the fight that I'm having with facilities right now, but that's also allowed me to open the door to have this conversation of, here's why we're not able to meet your need. So as long as I think you have that open dialogue and that communication, and as long as you recognize it's the journey to get to your end result, it's not a magic bullet, it's not gonna happen today. So I know my conversation with facilities, it's gonna be a good year-long conversation to get to where I want them to be in terms of, all right, so for FY21, let's sit down and have a conversation and see what makes sense.
I want to work for her, but.
She's hiring, but.
She's
Do have time, or I don't want to cut.
Are we good?
I know that there's
keep questions for
maybe
the end.
But just
one
a
more
last
gentleman.
comment, because
One
my
last question.
experiences, I think the challenge we face today is more of the job market today. I grew up in the environment where we had a lot of long-term resources working for the same company. Now, any project, we just go through the street and hire somebody who may have a lot of experience, but they bring in a different culture. They don't line up with the PMO office processes. It takes a long time to change that person before the process can start.
Yes.
That is a very important one.
Yes, that's where the people comes in as well.
Mhm.
And as we started the presentation, that organizations are becoming more and more projectized, project-based. How do you keep a strong culture while still balance it with a projectized organization is a part of the challenge. Okay, great. Thank you. I do want to hand this over back to Elise. Thanks, Rachel. Appreciate this, and thanks everyone for your time and the questions. Over to Elise.